Hello people, in this video we want to look at the classification of tracheostomy tubes. So look at this table here. So they are classifying the tracheostomy tubes based on the cuff. So they have uncuffed and cuffed. Can you see this here? Based on the cuff, uncuffed and cuffed. Then you have based on the fenestra. At the upper curvature of the tube, you have tubes without fenestra, fenestrated, single, multiple fenestrated tube. Then they have based on the length. You have standard length, extra length, etc. Then based on the number of lumens, that is the cannula, you have single lumen cannula, a tube, double lumen, etc. So this is the Jackson and Fuller. They are saying Jackson and Fuller, these two have double lumen. Non-metallic ones have single lumen, looks like. Then there are some special tracheostomy tubes, suction aided. These are metallic, suction aided tracheostomy tubes. And based on the material also you can classify. There can be metallic, non-metallic and mixed also. Metallic is Jackson and Fuller, which you saw, which has double lumen cannula tube, and non-metallic you have PVC. PVC is what? Polyvinyl chloride. Silicone ones, siliconized PVC, they have mixed both, looks like sialistic and rubber tube. Mixed you'll have armored tubes. That sounds like armored. Okay. So did you understand the classification, guys? Based on the cuff, based on the fenestra, based on the length, based on the number of lumens that they have, suction aided, you can have, then based on the material, you can have metallic, non-metallic and mixed. Okay. See, you're seeing inside, they have a balloon kind of a thing inside, guys. So are you able to see it here? This one, cuff, they have marked it here. So what are you supposed to see in this one? Cuffed. This one is cuffed, right? So you can see the balloon here. So this is the cuffed, correct? This is not cuffed. Perfectly we understand. Then what is this obturator? Obturator. This obturator is something that will be outside, guys. Okay. So it will be guiding the tracheostomy, the length. Okay. It will be kind of a guide. That will be the obturator. Look at this. Okay. If this is the outer part and this is the inner part, fenestra is more like a hole, guys. Look at this. There is a fenestration here. See, they have marked here. Fenestration is there here. It's a hole. So we have looked at some terminologies, right? So let us look at this classification again, if it makes sense. So there are tracheostomy tubes which have uncuffed. Okay, you have uncuffed tracheostomy tubes. You have cuffed tracheostomy tubes. Trough can be single or double or low pressure cuff tube based on the fenestra. That is that hole at the upper curvature of the tube. This is tube without fenestra, single and multiple fenestrated tube. That makes sense now. Length of the tube, standard length, extra length. Okay. Adjustable flange length, long tube. Or you can say flange long tube. Okay. Based on the number of lumens. Okay. This we have to look at. Based on the number of lumens or the cannula, you can have single lumen, which is non-metallic. Metallic can have double lumen. Jackson and Fuller and all will have double lumen. Okay. We'll look at that. Then you have suction aided tracheostomy tubes, which will be metallic. Based on the material, you have metallic. Jackson, Fuller are metallic. Non-metallic, you have PVC, silicone. Okay, all this we have looked at. Now let us look at the what the other textbook says in the classification for adult various type of tracheostomy tubes. What and all are there? You have the uncuffed and cuffed. Yes, we saw double cuff. Okay. Each cuff can be inflated alternatively to prevent pressure necrosis at one side. So you can have double cuff. Fenestrated, you can have single or multiple holes situated at the upper curvature. What will this fenestra help in? It will help in speech production, okay, or in weaning the tracheostomy so that they can breathe from the larynx also. That's what they said, right? So it will help in weaning. Fenestrated tube is used in children for decannulation also. They can use this decannulation, okay. Then this one, adjustable flange long tube. So the long tube, extra length and all they said, right? Extra length are used when pretracheal issues. You know that, pretracheal tissues are swollen, thick or swollen, or you have to bypass a growth or stenosis in the trachea. You want to bypass some growth. Okay, then you need some extra length tracheostomy tube. How's it going, people? So then the flange in these cases is movable and fixed at a desired place according to its thickness. What is this flange now? Okay, so if this is inside and this is outside, right, here you have the flange, this wing thing. That is the flange. So you can have a flange. What will this flange do? For extra long, they are giving this flange, right? Look at this, adjustable flange long tube. Flange in these cases is movable and fixed at a desired place according to the thickness of tissues of the neck. You can adjust it. That's why adjustable flange long tube. Then you have single lumen tube. There is no inner cannula. Double lumen tube means they have inner cannula inside and outer cannula. This is what you saw, right? Or if you haven't seen, look at this. This is inner one looks like, and this is the outer one. See, the inner one is inside this outer one. Okay, let's look at this. So they have an inner cannula inside and outer cannula. It is easier to remove, clean and replace the inner cannula, keeping outer cannula in place for breathing. Then you have suction aid tracheostomy tubes. They have a small tube ending above the cuff to suck out pharyngeal secretions. Okay, look at this. This is suction aid. Let's see what they are telling. There is B for aspiration above the cuff. So you have something here. So if there is pharyngeal secretion collected above the cuff, then only they are removing this. Suction should always be done before deflating the cuff so that the accumulated pharyngeal secretions do not get aspirated into the trachea. That makes sense, right? Here you have the pharynx and here you have the trachea and here's your cuff. So pharyngeal secretions, if you want to remove, you have to remove before you deflate this cuff, right? Otherwise everything will go down. So we looked at the suction aid tracheostomy tube, then tracheostomy with speaking valve. So these people whoever want voice, speaking, etc. So look at this, trachea tube with speaking valve. So he's able to convert it into voice. Look at this, a valve is fitted at the outer end of the tracheostomy tube. It allows ingress of air when breathing, but it closes when breathing out. So the air finds its way to vocal cords and produces sound. Why would somebody need this? Because they have had a treatment for the bilateral abductor paralysis, right? Or in laryngeal stenosis. Basically, what happens in bilateral abductor paralysis, the vocal cords are very close, they cannot breathe. So they would have separated them. They would have treated and separated them. Okay, now a long-term treatment of the bilateral abductor paralysis. So what will happen? Now it will be separated. So what will happen if it is separated? So their vocal cords will be like this, separated, so that they can breathe. So now they cannot talk. They can breathe, but they cannot talk. So for these people, they will give a tracheostomy with speaking valve. They can, it looks like they can, when they are breathing out, they can produce the sound, right? See, in this case, they don't have to use their finger and close the tracheostomy tube because this valve is there, right? They don't have to put their finger here and close this hole. Okay, so we looked at some kind of classification. Now let us look at yet another classification according to the material. Okay. So here they have shown a lot of metallic tracheostomy tubes, okay, and they have shown tracheal dilator, TD, the scissors, the kind of thing. Don't look at that, but look at these. These are some metallic tracheostomy tubes. This is the Fuller bivalve tracheostomy tube, F1, okay, and then you have the inner fenestrated tube. So this is the outer and this is the inner. Inner one has fenestration, okay. These two together are the Fuller bivalve tracheostomy tube. Okay, inner one and outer one separately they have kept. Then this is Jackson tracheostomy tube, J1, J2, J3. All the three are looks like together they are this Jackson tracheostomy tube. So this is outer one, this is inner one, and this is obturator. Obturator means for guiding. You saw that, right? So you know what obturator means now. You know what fenestration means now. Fenestration is there one in which one? Fuller. In your Fuller bivalve tracheostomy tube, the inner one has a fenestration. The Jackson one has an obturator. Both of this Fuller and Jackson seem to be metallic. Okay. Okay, what are the materials? Silver. Can you imagine silver? But they are saying it's an alloy of silver, copper and phosphorus. Interesting. And this Fuller and Jackson both are coming here. They are metallic, okay, but they are silver also. Fuller and Jackson, okay. Then what else? You have PVC, polyvinyl chloride. These are single-use, disposable, thermolabile, and they adjust to tracheal lumen. And they thus adjust to tracheal lumen. Nice, right? So that is an advantage. They are disposable, single-use, thermolabile, and they adjust to tracheal lumens. PVC. Then silicone. Silicone bacteria and secretions do not adhere to the tube, and there is minimum of crusting. So again, this one seems to be good. Bacteria won't adhere to this tube, silicone one, okay. Siliconized PVC, the mixed these two things. These has properties of both silicon and PVC, and thus they are thermolabile and adjust to tracheal wall, and the silicone will prevent crusting. Okay. So which one won't have crusting? Silicone. Okay. Silastic. It is soft and non-irritating. It minimizes crusting. Even this one minimizes crusting. Then armored tubes, we saw this already. It is plastic tube reinforced by spiral or rings of stainless steel. So this is metal plus PVC, looks like. No, metal plus, what is this? Plastic, yeah, kind of PVC. They are not easily kinked. So they don't bend easily or something. So that's why they are armored, is it? So kinked means to say they won't bend easily. Won't bend kind of a thing, right? So guys, did you understand in the material what are they saying? Silver, PVC, then silicone, then siliconized PVC, then you have silastic, then last you had some armored. Okay. So what did you understand by all this? Which won't have crusting? Minimum crusting in silicone. Prevents crusting in siliconized PVC, okay, and even the silastic is also minimize crusting. This is actually soft and non-irritating. Bacteria and secretions won't adhere to the silicone one. Okay guys, how's it going? Too much? We have finished the classification guys. Now we will just look at some examples here. This is the Fuller tracheostomy tube. This one has outer tube and inner tube, you know that. So this is having the double, what did you say, double lumen, is it? See, they have inner cannula, inside outer cannula means what? Double lumen tube only, right? So look at this. It has an outer tube and an inner tube. So here they are showing you the outer tube. Okay, this is outer tube and this is inner tube. Inner tube has fenestration and the inner tube fits into the outer tube like this. See, inner tube is here and outer tube is here. So inner tube has fit into the outer tube. So it consists of outer tube and inner tube, the latter being longer. Which is longer? The inner tube is longer. Yes, the inner tube is longer. You can see here. The outer tube is made up of two blades. Yes, two blades which pressed together can be easily introduced into the tracheostomy opening. So you can introduce this outer one like this, these two blades, like you press it and put it inside the tracheostomy opening. Okay, and the inner tube, what will happen? It has a hole in the center. Yes, it has a hole in the center. That is the fenestration, right? So the patient can still breathe. What is it saying? The patient still has a chance to breathe from the larynx. Even when the tube is blocked at its outer end, he can use the larynx to breathe. So this is the inner tube, just the inner tube they have shown here. You can see here, just the inner tube. And they are showing the fenestration here. And this is the longer tube compared to the inner one. The outer one. So what did we just look at? The Fuller's tracheostomy tube. Okay. So we are done with the Fuller. Remember, Fuller has two, right? Inner and outer. Now let us move on to the next one. Jackson's tracheostomy tube, guys. Jackson's tracheostomy has three parts. You already saw. It has outer, inner, and the obturator. Okay. So let us look at the outer, inner, and obturator. The outer tube is not split. The Fuller one was split, you remember. Inner tube can be fixed to the shield of the outer tube by a lock. Okay. So you can fix the inner to the outer. And the obturator, what does it do? It helps in the introduction of the tube into the trachea. It's like a guide, right? So we saw, let's look at the photo and understand. Outer one is here. Outer one doesn't have any split like the Fuller one. The inner one locks into the outer tube and the obturator will guide. Okay, so this is the Jackson's tracheostomy tube. So did you understand this? It has three parts, outer, inner, and obturator, guys. Outer tube is not split. The inner can be fixed to the shield of the outer tube by a lock. Obturator helps in the introduction of the tube into trachea. Last, then cuffed tracheostomy tube, guys. Cuff means what? Balloon kind of thing. You will inflate it, right? So it will prevent aspiration of the pharyngeal secretions into the trachea. You have already seen this. It can also prevent air leak. Very good. It can prevent air leak. It will prevent aspiration of pharyngeal secretions. It is used when there is danger of aspiration of pharyngeal secretions in an unconscious patient or when the patient is put on a respirator. So obviously, if you are fearing that there will be aspirations in a patient who is unconscious, then you can use a cuffed tracheostomy tube. The cuff should be deflated every 2 hours, or for 5 minutes you have to deflate it for every 2 hours to prevent ischemia and damage to the trachea and cartilage necrosis. So this is important. You can use this cuff tube, but you should deflate it every 2 hours for 5 minutes to prevent ischemia and damage to the trachea and the cartilage necrosis. So imagine there's a balloon here and it will cause ischemia and damage to the trachea. So you should always deflate it for 5 minutes every 2 hours. Okay. Nowadays, inflation of the cuff can be alternated to avoid, okay, there are double cuff, right? That's what we saw. So once you inflate that cuff, the other time you inflate the other cuff. So 2 cuffs are available and you can alternate between these 2 cuffs. Nowadays, what do they have, guys? 2 cuffs. So instead of single cuff, they have 2 cuffs. Once you inflate this and the other time you inflate this. So it looks like this is the cuff, right? What do you say? In cuffed itself, you have suction aid tracheostomy tube. Here you have a suction aid. This one you already saw, to remove the pharyngeal secretions. Remember, when you're removing the pharyngeal secretions, this cuff should be inflated. Otherwise, secretions will anyways go into the trachea, right? So here it is there. Suction should always be done before deflating the cuff so that the accumulated pharyngeal secretions do not get into the trachea. That's it, guys. We are done with the types of tracheostomy tubes. Now look at this. The size of the tracheostomy tube and the age of the patient. In preterm neonates, it will be around 2.5 to 3 millimeter. What is this? Tracheostomy tube size, lumen size. Is that like thick? The diameter then? Because this is the lumen millimeter. So it is 2.5 to 3 millimeter in preterm and preterm neonates. Adults, it is 8 to 9 millimeter. It's like just less than a centimeter. What do you say? The tracheostomy tube lumen, size of lumen. Guys, look at the textbook and understand it better, okay? Taking a recap, what did we want to look at in this video? Tracheostomy tube types. On the basis of the cuff, that balloon thing, it can be uncuffed, cuffed. Cuffed can be single cuff or double cuff. Then you have, based on the fenestra, you can have tubes without fenestra, single fenestrated, multiple fenestrated. Single fenestrated, we just now saw that fuller one, right? And based on the length of the tube, you can have standard length, extra length, adjustable flange long tube. So that flange will be like a wing, right? So that you can adjust its position. Then when do you use this thing? When the flange thing, when there is some tracheal stenosis, you need to bypass something so that you need a little more length, okay? Then coming to the, on the basis of number of lumens, the cannula, you can have single lumen tube, which will be non-metallic. Double lumen you have seen in Jackson and Fuller. You will have outer one and inner one, etc. Then suction aid tracheostomy tubes, again here they're talking about metallic. On the basis of material, you have metallic, non-metallic. Metallic you already saw Fuller and Jackson. Non-metallic you can have PVC, silicone, siliconized PVC, silastic rubber tube. Remember the silastic, siliconized PVC, silicone, all these will not cause more crusting, right? And bacteria and all won't adhere to the silicone, looks like. Bacteria and secretions won't adhere to the silicone, right? Then you have the armored one, which are mixed. Then what did we see? Same thing we saw from a different textbook, the classification. Then based on material we saw, what did we see here? Bacteria and secretions do not adhere to the silicone one, right? Minimal crusting will be there in the silicone and silastic, okay? Then the armored tubes are a mixture of both the metallic, non-metallic, etc. This will not kink easily. Then we saw the Fuller tracheostomy tube, inner tube and outer tube, and outer tube has this 2 blades, etc. And the inner one has a fenestration. Remember, inner one is long. Then the Jackson one has 3 parts. You have the outer tube, inner tube, and the obturator. Obturator is kind of a guide, right? And outer tube will be having what? It doesn't have any blade kind of a thing. It doesn't have that split. Inner tube will fit into the outer with a lock, and obturator will guide into the trachea. Then you saw the cuffed tracheostomy tube. Basically, it will be a kind of a balloon. It is used when you don't want the person to aspirate on the pharyngeal secretions, usually in unconscious patients, right? Or when patient is put on respirator. This cuff should be deflated for 5 minutes every 2 hours because you don't want ischemia and damage to the trachea and cartilage. So nowadays, tubes are there with 2 cuffs, so you can alternatively inflate either cuff, right? So you can not put pressure only at one side of the trachea. Then you have the suction aid, the cuffed one with the suction aid. Remember, whenever you have inflated the cuff, that time only you should suction the pharyngeal secretions, right? Otherwise, if you deflate and then do the pharyngeal secretions would have anyways gone into the trachea. Right? So we have looked at all the tracheostomy tube types, and sizes also we saw of the lumen for preterm neonates 2.5 to 3 millimeter, adults 8 to 9 millimeter. Okay. That's all for now in this video. Bye bye.